They thought I was finished long before I ever began. Not because I failed, but because I didn't fit the version of success they could recognize. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No doors slammed. Just a quiet meeting room, glass walls, a polished table, and faces that had already decided my future before I walked in. "Thank you for coming in," the CEO said, not looking up from his tablet. That was when I knew. I had given this company 7 years. 7 years of late nights, missed birthdays, cancelled vacations, and swallowing my opinions so projects could move faster. I wasn't loud. I wasn't flashy. I didn't network at cocktail hours or play office politics. I worked, relentlessly, quietly, effectively. And that made them underestimate me. They told me my role was being restructured, that the company was moving in a new direction, that my contributions were appreciated. The words were soft. The meaning wasn't. By the time I reached my desk, my system access was already disabled. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. Security waited nearby, pretending they were there for policy compliance. I packed my things in silence. What none of them knew, what no one in that building understood, was that the project they thought was just another internal initiative was never truly theirs. It was mine. 2 years earlier, when the board rejected my proposal, I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I didn't pitch harder. I simply nodded, thanked them for their time, and asked one question. May I continue exploring this independently? They said yes, because they didn't think it mattered. That project, the one they dismissed as too ambitious, too risky, too early, was quietly becoming something much bigger, bigger than a department, bigger than the company itself. I had built it outside their spotlight, outside their control, using my own network, my own capital, my own name carefully hidden behind shell entities and silent partners. When they escorted me out that morning, they believed they were removing a problem. In reality, they had just cut the final thread holding them together. I didn't go home. I didn't panic. I didn't call a lawyer or post cryptic messages online. I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks away and opened my laptop. By noon, the first call came in. By sunset, the world looked very different. But that part of the story, the part they never saw coming, starts with what happened inside that boardroom after I left, and how one decision they made at 9:17 a.m. triggered a chain reaction that would expose everything. At 9:17 a.m., the board thought the matter was closed. They returned to their agenda, coffee cups refilled, voices relaxed. In their minds, the risk had been removed. The difficult employee was gone. The loose end was cut. At 10:03 a.m., the first email arrived. It was from an external legal firm none of them recognized. Subject line: Request for immediate clarification regarding IP ownership and revenue attribution. The CEO skimmed it, frowned, and forwarded it to legal with a short note. Probably nothing. Check. At 10:41 a.m., a second message arrived, this time from a multinational partner based in Singapore. Polite tone. One sharp question buried in the middle. Can you confirm whether your company still holds controlling interest in the Aurora infrastructure framework, or has that shifted following today's personnel changes? That one made the CFO sit up straighter. Aurora was the internal name they used for the project they believed was theirs. The same project they had dismissed publicly, then quietly folded into their long-term roadmap once it started showing promise. At 11:12 a.m., their head of strategy walked into the boardroom without knocking. His face was pale. "We have a problem," he said. "A big one." By then, phones were buzzing across the executive floor. Slack channels that were usually quiet started lighting up. Legal was no longer calm. IT was running access logs. Finance was double-checking subsidiary structures they hadn't reviewed in years. Because someone I had just triggered a clause they forgot existed. Years earlier, when I asked for permission to continue the project independently, legal had drafted a narrow approval. It allowed exploration without company funding. What they didn't catch was the condition attached to it. Any independently developed architecture, client acquisition, or monetization pathway would remain solely mine unless the company formally acquired it within a defined window. They never did, because they didn't think I'd get far. While they were busy sidelining me, I had finalized something else entirely. At 12:28 p.m., the press release went live. A newly formed holding entity backed by 3 international funds and 1 strategic buyer announced the acquisition of a proprietary infrastructure platform valued at just over $3 billion. Industry insiders recognized it immediately. It was Aurora. Except now it wasn't theirs. By 1 p.m., the company's stock had begun to slide. Analysts were asking questions on earnings forums. Journalists were calling investor relations, demanding confirmation. One headline started circulating internally before it hit the public feed. Core growth asset transferred outside company following executive oversight. At 2:17 p.m., the board reconvened in emergency session. This time no one was relaxed. They pulled contracts, emails, approvals, old meeting notes. My name appeared everywhere attached to designs, filings, partner introductions. A pattern they had never bothered to see because they assumed loyalty equaled ownership. The CEO finally said it out loud. We fired the wrong person. At 3:40 p.m., legal confirmed the worst-case scenario. The company had no claim, no leverage, no recourse. Any attempt to challenge would expose internal misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty. By evening, regulators were asking questions they couldn't easily answer. By nightfall, the empire they thought was untouchable was bleeding credibility, valuation, and trust. And me? I was sitting in my apartment, shoes off, phone face down, watching city lights flicker on one by one. No victory speech. No celebration. Just a quiet sense of clarity. They thought power lived in titles, access cards, and boardrooms. They were wrong. Power lives with the person who builds something so valuable it can walk away and take the future with it. By the next morning, they wanted to talk. But for the first time, I wasn't available.